Me, always.
Ah, Sarah. Well, we might be talking with you first because there seemed to be a little mix up in the communication about our time for this call. So we'll see if we can get our author on. But in the meantime, uh, I'm ready. Sarah, you're ready. So we'll just take it from there and hope we have the author sometime soon. But Sarah,
Yeah.
Hayden Paris, let's start this conversation with you because you care rather deeply and personally about book banning, and tell me why that is. What prompted you to be so passionate about this issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always been a big reader, and one of my favorite books, like the first books that really I felt like changed me, was The Giver, and that was pretty much like always targeted for banning as soon as it came out, and I never understood that. And then in 2021, our school district in Iowa, Johnston, had a group of parents trying to ban two books from our curriculum. It was The Hate You Give and The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. And the fight got pretty ugly, and we just couldn't believe that people were trying to ban books in our school district, especially targeting books written by Black and Brown people in a school district that's predominantly white, predominantly white. Um, and so after the books were retained in our schools, thankfully, but after all of that was done, we kind of looked around and we realized that our school district was not unique and this was happening across Iowa and across the US. And we were like, someone should do something about this. And we realized that no one was really doing anything about it. So we decided it should be us. And so us is a group of moms who met at school board meetings to talk about the book bans and other things. And we just started, had no idea what we were doing, but now here we are almost 4 years later. And, um, we've gotten things in the national media about Iowa's book bans. And our main focus is handing out banned and challenged books for free at a variety of community events. And we have handed out over 20,000 books.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Mhm.
Tell me again about your community. Where do you live and what schools are we talking about?
Yep. So I'm in Johnston, which is a suburb north of Des Moines. Um, and I mean, really, so in Iowa, it is very specific. Like the hotbeds of banning are pretty specific to wherever there are very active chapters of Moms for Liberty.
Uh,
So here, that is the Des Moines area, and the surrounding suburbs, the like Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area, and then like Sioux Center, northwest Iowa.
yeah, Sioux Center, Nicole Bart, who's a member of the Iowa Writers Collaborative, has written beautifully about that experience with the Sioux Center Library. And I can't help wondering why, at this point, there is this sort of almost poking the bear thing to get some kind of book ban taking place in some of these small towns. Not like there aren't other issues going around impacting people. And the other
Right.
thing I can't understand is all it takes is looking at your silly iPhone or phone and going to the internet, and you can find so much more explicit stuff.
Right.
What is this really about? Do you know, Sarah?
I mean, I think it's honestly, I think so. We know that books teach empathy, and it's a great way to experience, people whose lives are different than your own, and gain empathy for people who and like respect for people who you may not even have a chance to interact with. Northwest Iowa, it's rural, it's very white, and you may not have the opportunity to interact often with people of color. And but if you read books, you can kind of form your own opinions. And I think a lot of these parents are afraid that their children will honestly be more open-minded than them and not hold some of those same beliefs and maybe view their parents negatively for some of their long-held beliefs and closed-mindedness.
Jan, I want to pull you into the discussion too. And Abena Sankofa Imhotep just joined the call, who's an author of a children's book as well. And I want to, Abena, if you're up for it, join this discussion. We are awaiting our author, and so we're having a discussion without him until he joins us. But I can't wait to ask him a ton of questions. But Jan, unmute if you would, because one of those questions is about this whole genre of graphic novel. Now, I gotta admit to you, when I saw the term graphic novel, I thought it was, explicit. Yeah, yeah, I know. Why not be honest?
A graphic.
Yes, it's all about graphics, ladies and gentlemen. So, Abena, did you know that? You probably knew that. Of course you did. You wrote one that's a graphic novel. God.
Graphic novels they're kind of like comic books.
Yeah.
And they appeal to a lot of people. A lot of young people are reading them. In fact, as Sarah would probably back me up, graphic novels get a lot of kids reading that wouldn't read a book any other way because they are attracted to the illustrations. It's colorful. It helps them picture what's going on in the story. It's easier to read. And I think a lot of kids just feel like it's more exciting to read it. But given that, there's also a lot of adults that like graphic novels. So it's not just a kid's book. It's a great way to encourage maybe hesitant readers to look into stories.
Yeah. Well, it was fascinating to me. When I was going through it, I kept thinking, oh, this is a comic book. Oh, no, it's not a comic book. It's couple hundred pages long. And oh, it's really.
Yeah, well, one of the most well known is Maus, Maus, which is technically a graphic novel, and certainly not a comic book because, of course, it dealt with the Holocaust. So,
right. So Abena, I'm going to pull you in here. Our author is not on the call as yet, so we're talking about book banning in general and writing for young adults or children in your case. And I'd just like your thoughts on book banning. What's your experience? Are you finding I can't help but think if somebody bans a book in a school, it's just going to increase readership of that book. Am I right?
It's been great publicity for books. I mean, I think book bans are silly. I think they are, of course, every parent can decide whether or not their kids can read whatever books, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But to say because I don't like my child to read this, no child should read this, I think that's silly. So I'm against book bans. As a person who has written a book and has a couple of libraries around town, like, no, it's silly to me.
So, for the purpose of this discussion, tell us about your book and how it's been received, how you're using it, how classrooms are using it or libraries are using it, and if you have any kind of measure of the impact the book is having.
Gosh, that's a big question, Julie, but thank you for giving me space. So I wrote Omari's Big Tree and the Mighty Djembe. It's a children's story picture book. I like to think that it's appropriate for kids from third grade to fifth grade, although I've read the story to preschoolers and then the elderly at long-term care facilities and everything in between. So it's been received really well over the last couple of years. I know that it's been used in classrooms as a way to, provide kids with images that they can relate to culturally. There are some Des Moines specific images in my book, so I think that's nice for the local schools to be able to wrap some of their curriculum around that, and environmentalism as well. I did have a chance to share about a year or so ago with a group of soon-to-be teachers at UNI. and they actually were using my book, and I didn't know, but they were using the book as a way to inform how to approach social studies in diverse classrooms.
Ah,
So I think like I was pleasantly surprised. That was not on my radar when I wrote the story at all. But it's been well received and used in many, many different ways.
that's great. That's great. So let me introduce you to Sarah Hayden Paris, who's on
I
the.
know Sarah. Hey,
Oh,
Sarah.
Yeah.
okay.
Hello.
All right, great. Well, Sarah, talk to us about what's going on in Iowa regarding book banning. Is it on the rise? Is it kind of leveled off? Is it going down, or is it as bad as it's ever been?
I mean, really, it's as bad as it's ever been, I guess, because we do have SF 496, which is the book banning law that passed into 2023. Um, and there were two parts to that. The first is that it bans the mention of like gender ideology, sexual identity, gender identity, anything like that from K through 6 schools. And then since so many school districts in Iowa have 6, 7, and 8 in the same building, it's basically not talking about that through grade 8. So this means that books like Antango Makes Three, which is a board book based on a true story about two male penguins who are given a egg to raise and they hatch a baby because they were trying to hatch rocks. Um, and some up like there was a book about David Bowie that got banned from Urbandale schools because I don't even remember. It's something very, very slight. Um, and then the other part of the law is it says that there can't be anything sexually explicit in grades K through 12. Um, but they don't really define what they mean by that. So every school district has kind of been left to determine like, is that kissing? Is that holding hands? Is that any sort of portrayal of a romantic relationship? Um, we have a good example of kind of like what gets caught up in that overly broad language is that there's a book called The Blood Years, and it is a story about a girl growing up in the Holocaust in Romania. And there is a one sentence rape scene, and that is enough to get the book banned, even though it's very much integral to the story and shows like how powerless people like her were in their position because he was in a position where he was hiding her and her family, so she couldn't really do anything about it. But that's enough to get that banned. And now Iowa students can't read that book. So both of those like prongs of the law are currently being battled out in courts. We hope that um, the law will obviously get overturned. Right now it is enjoined. So the schools don't have to pull those books out of school, out of their libraries, but many of them have because based on the status of the law, whether or not it's enjoined, they can't keep like putting books back and taking them back out. And so a lot of them are just kind of whatever their library collection status was when the law got enjoined is kind of where they've held steady. So we do know that over 4,000 physical books have been taken out of Iowa public school libraries, and it's over 1,400 unique titles. So things like The Bluest Eye and The Color Purple, um, the Giver. There's some really common, well-loved books that are now no longer available to many of our students, but it varies school district by school district. So um, our students can be getting wildly different exposure to literature.
What happens within your organization, the name of which again is what?
Annie's Foundation.
Annie's Foundation. So what happens when you get the word that a particular book is going to be banned? And I wouldn't be surprised, Jan, maybe you have information about this, but I wouldn't be surprised if our guest's book, Wake Now in the Fire,
Nope.
is going to be banned. It's about a story.
Yes.
Yeah, it is banned. Is that right, Jan? Oh, she's on the call. Okay, sorry.
I'm talking to the publicist right now.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
Okay, so is he able to join or?
I'm going to mute you right now, so you need to.
Okay.
All right. So,
Um,
but anyway, the story is of a decision in Chicago Public Schools in 2013 that banned the book Persepolis from classrooms and libraries across the district. And that banning was resisted by the students, who apparently many of whom loved the book. It's about a woman who grew up in Iran during and after the Islamic Revolution, kind of blending personal coming of age with political upheaval. And anyway, the author of the book we're talking about today was a young librarian at the time. And what he witnessed and later uncovered through years of reporting and interviews and FOIA requests became the foundation for this book. And it's a story of students organizing, administrators deflecting responsibility, and the power of young people who recognized censorship for what it was and pushed back. And I'm wondering if we're seeing more activity from young people today. And feel free if any of you have a comment about that. But Sarah, are you getting any sense of that? Or is there more pushback? Oh,
Can I interrupt?
I think
Can I interrupt
yeah.
1 minute, Julie?
yes.
The publicist is going to get on the Zoom, so watch for her.
Okay. I'm all
Okay.
I'm all eyes. All right.
Okay. Sorry.
That's all right. Sarah?
Yeah, we definitely see students are very passionate about fighting for their books. We haven't really, I think in Iowa, it's been a little hard to get some of that like on the ground support from students. And a lot of that is because of the nature of the law as it's written. People don't want to I mean, if you can't have a book in the school, then it's hard to really organize a response at the school level. And we try to maintain some distance from the school districts because sometimes we can be friendly and sometimes we have to hold them accountable to an uncomfortable degree. So it's kind of balancing that. But students are very there are a lot who say like these books make them feel targeted and attacked and isolated. And it's important that they remain in the schools and on the shelves.
So, what happens when you find out about a book being banned? Do you then just rush in and immediately start delivering copies of the book, or how do you handle that?
We try to use our social media to raise awareness about it. Right now, we're not getting a lot of reports of additional books being pulled out of schools, so we haven't had to really do a lot of responses there. But like with the Sioux Center example, as soon as we found out, we were really reporting on it extensively online and trying to get people engaged so that they would go to library board meetings and tell their city representatives, don't take away my books. And I mean, I think that was pretty successful. A lot of people are afraid, unfortunately, to speak out against, these groups that are very vocal about wanting to get rid of books. But I do know that there was a meeting held by one of the people who wants to ban that specific book from the public library, and it was about half pro and half against, which for that very deeply conservative part of the state is actually people were very encouraged that so many people showed up.
If you're talking about the Sioux Center case, I think what started it is a right-wing blogger called and tried to make a big story out of it. It just
Yep.
seemed like it didn't come up among the populace of Sioux Center. It seemed
Right.
pretty targeted to rile up, quote unquote, the base. And is that what you're seeing elsewhere around the state?
Oh, yeah. And unfortunately, that particular blogger is involved in the vast majority of them. So, yes.
All right. All right. Follow the money. Where's his funding coming from? That's what I want to know.
I know.
Maya Bradford, thank you for stepping in. Hi.
Hi. Everybody, I'm the publicist for this book, and it's probably my fault Jared is not here. I sent an email this morning confirming it for 2 p.m. So I've been calling him, and I guess I'm just here to say I'm really sorry.
Hey,
Um, and
that's
to
all
answer
right.
any questions you have about the book, I'm calling him repeatedly. I will say Jarrett is a guy who's like not always on his phone, which is so admirable, but in this moment, not great.
You know what? We're having a great conversation.
Okay, good.
We'll have to meet him when he comes to Beaverdale Books on February
And
6th.
he will be there. Yes, that is correct on the schedule. And also, I mean, I know he was really looking forward to this. So if he could record a message for you guys, he prepared notes. So it's
You
just a
know what?
shame.
It's all right. It's all right. But I am going to ask you some questions that I had for him.
Yes, I will answer as best I can. I'm not a professional activist or a librarian or an author like he is, but I know this book pretty well. So any questions about the book that I can answer, I'm really happy to.
I do have some questions about publishing in general.
Oh, great, good.
And the whole, don't worry, don't worry. Um, and the whole movement towards graphic novels. And I admitted at the top of the hour that I was so misinformed. I thought graphic novel meant it was explicit.
This is a common misconception that has been happening for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So tell us why this is catching fire. How is it impacting? I mean, the publishing industry finally realized, wait a minute, young people aren't buying books like we want them to. So we'll figure out a way to appeal to that market. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been in comics for like almost 20 years. I've been working on graphic novels with big publishers for a long time, and definitely, I would say over the past decade, if you work in a library, you know that comics, the pace has picked up, and kids really, really, really read comics in a way that I think that even when I was younger, they didn't used to, and I think they're taught in the classroom definitely more than when I was younger. Like when I was young, I read Mouse in high school, but that was it, right? Like that's like the gold standard. And now I think that a lot of educators, a lot of librarians are seeing the value of graphic novels as a really great tool for younger people in particular to engage with complicated text. And I think that's why Jarrett thought of this medium when he thought about telling this story, is it would be accessible to lots of young people who want to get involved in activism and stopping book bans and organizing within their schools, and this would just be a really great vehicle for that. I think that organizations like ALA really have embraced, or forever they've really supported graphic novels, and they do a lot of really great work there. So this all made sense for this kind of a book to be in this format. And I also think there's something about comics, and I think especially the art that AJ did for this book, where like you can really see yourself in these characters. Like I think that the way that they're drawn, like it's very easy to put yourself in the characters, and that is this. I'm like every time someone comes on, I'm like, is it Jarrett? He can say this better than me. But I really think the art lends itself that way, so that students when they're reading this are like, that could be me. I could be organizing in my school. I could be standing up for things I believe in, and I think that the art does a really good job of that. I hope that answers your question.
So Maya, are you secretly kind of hoping this gets banned in schools?
I do not. I mean, I feel like, all press is good press, and I think right now everybody in publishing knows that when a book gets banned, you get like a lot of attention in this way because there's just so much more awareness of it. But I want this book to be read by everybody. I don't want it to be banned.
Yeah, I just wonder, I can't help but think, I mean, it was a long time ago when I was a kid, but boy, if somebody said I couldn't read something, I think I would put it at the top of the list.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always blown away now when I talk to people who have, especially I think teens, comics are just really cool, which I would say that they didn't used to be. Like now that's like a very, very big part of like youth culture is to read comics. And I think graphic novels really speak to like a type of, we have a lot of nonfiction, we have a lot of educational graphic novels we're doing. I think manga is a whole other genre that kids really, really love. If you are in libraries, you see, and that's different. But, I'll take anything. I think comics literacy is really important because, it's used not even just for books, right? Like we used to make comics for people in the army, like PS Magazine, to learn how to not blow up your tank. Like it's this universal language that's like very important. And I think any way kids are getting better at reading anything is really good.
So one of the things I love to do, and this is my hobby, and that is connecting people who might have a mutually beneficial connection. Okay, that's what I do. It's
We
what
love it.
That's how I breathe. And so I want you to meet Abena Sankofa Imhotep, who is a wonderful writer and has written a children's book and does well, you explain yourself the kinds of things you do, because who knows what will happen with this connection with a publicist for a major publishing company.
Right. Well, hi, Maya. I'm Abena. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called Omari's Big Tree and the Mighty Djembe. It's a children's story about community, family, friendship, and how to survive a big storm in Iowa. And kind of that's on the periphery, really, of my work. I have a community-based library, just acquired a second location, where we have about 3,000 books by diverse authors, for across all genres, really. And so I'm really interested in, we're building up the collection of graphic novels and comics and manga because it does reach a lot of young people. I work with young people in an after school program and a creative writing course, which now I can't call it creative writing because I think that's like on the cusp of being against the law. So we call it a writing course.
Really? Why?
I
Why?
don't know. I was told I can't say creative.
Are you
So
kidding me?
no, I hand to God, I cannot say creative in that building. I won't say which building, but
Is it a public school?
yes.
Oh boy. Okay.
So it's a writing course for middle schoolers. We have a blast. They lean toward poetry a lot, but some of the kids who they find writing interesting, but for them it's about the art. They prefer to draw their stories, and I want to encourage that. So I'm interested really to know if you have any perspective about um, youth, young folks who are artists, and what the possibilities could be for them.
You mean in terms of them getting into creating comics?
Yeah.
I mean, I think actually there are so many programs now within like universities. I don't really know about high schools that actually teach graphic novel courses. I think it is becoming a much more legitimized form of becoming an author. I know my alma mater, Wisconsin-Madison, has a really nice comics program, and Linda Berry, who's a very famous longtime graphic novelist, is like the, I think, artist in residence there who does really great classes. So I think it's like if you have any students who are really interested in comics, um, there are so many programs now that they can be a part of. And there's even places like in Vermont, they have the Center for Cartoon Studies, which I think is like it's not a college, but it's like a master's sort of a program, or somebody can correct me, but they do really great stuff too. I don't know if that's totally the answer that you're looking for, but the other great thing about comics is that's such easy, access. It's basically like making a zine if you want to make your own, right? And that's like the very kind of like back to basics of DIY, creating your own thing. And I think a lot of people now who acquire comics are looking to people who have done a lot of this work on their own and maybe have like a following online or a part of festivals or have like a following. So I think that there's just, yeah, like I think there's a lot of ways to get published now. And if your students are interested in it, like definitely reading and seeing what's being published right now. I have a lot of books I can recommend to you for your collection that we have recently published that I think you would like, including one that I am a huge advocate for, Big Jim and the White Boy. I don't know if anybody has read that yet, but it's a graphic novel reimagining of Huck Finn by David Walker and Marcus Kwame Anderson, and it is so good. It's from Jim's perspective, which I know is also the plot of James. It was a coincidence. It was like one of those like Ants in a Bug's Life came out at the same time thing. And it is so, so, so good. And I think it's being taught now in a lot of classes, like alongside Huck Finn, right? Because Huck Finn has like a lot of, I would say, controversial elements that it's hard to teach in classes now. And this book is really kind of like a reimagining that I think speaks to the current moment that students are really reacting really well to. So kind of went on a tangent, but I would really love to send you a copy of that book.
No.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll connect with you.
Great.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Jarrett's book. So, from your perspective, why don't you describe the plot and why you think it's going to be a successful book?
I can do both of those things. So the plot is really special, right? Because Jarrett is a Chicago public librarian, and he was involved in this 2013 case where Persepolis by very, very best-selling, famous Marjane Satrapi was banned in Chicago public schools. And the book really kind of explores like the bureaucracy and the like timeline of how something like this happens. Like, how can a huge school district, like the Chicago Public School District, suddenly make a decision like this that feels like so arbitrary? And it is almost like a minute by minute of like students finding out, staff finding out after the students, like the press finding out, the principal having to deal with it. And I think what makes that kind of exciting is like it gives you, it's both kind of like riveting in that way, but also gives you really hands-on knowledge of how to address something like this in your life. Like the kids get organized really quickly. The teachers have to kind of like walk this tightrope of like, I work for the administration, but I know that this is wrong. And it gives perspective to people who are in all like sides of a book ban about how to deal with it and how to organize effectively and how to work with your community. So it's a narrative, right? So it's a fictional reimagining of this. Jarrett is not writing, it's not nonfiction. It is a novel, a graphic novel, but it also is really like prescriptive. And I think in a lot of ways. So it's a story that's exciting, but it's also very educational, which I think people will really enjoy. And then Jarrett has such insider knowledge. Like he has the real emails that were going back and forth. Like it's kind of like an investigative adventure. And I think students will like it because Jarrett, working with students a lot, has created some really interesting, complex, diverse characters that you really want to get to know and really move the story along. So it has a lot of different elements.
I was taken by some of the family dynamics of
Yes.
characters in his book, and wondering, is that true to life or is that fictionalized?
You know, actually, I do wish Jarrett was here because I'm not totally sure. I know that a lot of it is based, he knows the students, and a lot of it is based on these real characters, but I couldn't tell you like
Okay.
just how real it is. I know, obviously these are kids when this happens, so there's a lot of making sure that I think they are protected. But maybe he
Okay.
can answer that in his message.
All right. Well, we'll see if he shows up. This will be fun.
And I do know that a lot of the students who were part of this original action, like they are now activists. Like we talked to the Freedom to Read Foundation, which is a big organization that fights book banning, and these kids are known to them, right? Like they're still doing a lot of work in their communities, which is really cool.
No, that is great. I'm going to open it up to other questions from people on the call. And Sarah, you have an opportunity to talk to a publicist, so please take advantage of that. Jan, you too. And in the meantime, until I see some hands raised, I'm going to keep drilling down with you, Maya. I put on a writers retreat in the fall called the Okoboji Writers and Songwriters Retreat. We actually involved songwriters a couple of years ago, which was a big success. But I think we should have at least one, if not two, authors in this genre. So I made a note to Jarrett to see if he wanted to come. Evanston isn't that far away.
We would love to, I'm sure.
But if not, Jarrett, if he's not a bit, is he still working full time as a librarian?
Yes, in fact, that could be what he's doing right now.
Probably is. Probably is. Yeah, because I think this is a real opportunity for writers to be exposed to new ways of storytelling, and I love it. If you were to advise somebody who wanted to write a YA novel, would you tell them to think about going the graphic novel route, or would you stick to the traditional publishing?
Well, it really depends on like where your skills lie, right? Like Jarrett didn't draw this book, he wrote it, but he has done other graphic novels, and clearly this is a medium he feels passionate about. But you have to have that partnership with an artist. You could write a proposal and get paired with an artist through a publisher, but I think oftentimes coming together with an artist team is better. And then a lot of graphic novelists draw and write their whole book. And I would just say from working with a lot of them, it takes a minute. It's not like writing a novel. Like if you're going to draw the book, it takes like a really, really long time. And it's important to think about that. When we acquire graphic novels, it's like sometimes if you acquire a regular novel, it'll be out in like a year. Graphic novels can be out in like 4 years. It really depends.
What's your policy about using AI?
We do not do it. I don't know the official policy of our publisher, but I mean, we don't use AI.
Okay, I was thinking for graphic. Okay.
Yeah.
Dan, your hand is raised, and then Susan Beckman.
Yes, just to give an example of how diverse the graphic novel industry can be, I'm also working with Maya on another graphic novel, which is a graphic cookbook.
Oh, yes.
And
I was like, really? Oh, right.
yeah, we're going to have Sarah Beacon,
Yes.
who is another very talented young artist, and she pairs with cookbook writers. And so she illustrates cookbooks, and it's a way of reaching people that maybe aren't real confident in cooking. So she's done Let's Make Ramen. She's done Let's Make Bread. We featured her for that. And now she is going to come. She's got a book called Let's Make Cocktails, and we're partnering. You know how you like to network, Julie. We're partnering with Big Grove Brewery. And so she's going to be there and do a presentation about Let's Make Cocktails. And it just promises to be great fun. So, see, it's not all for kids.
True. That's very
yeah.
important.
Yeah. So I think that's April 20th. I'm going off of my memory at Big Grove Brewery. So there's another example. And the neat thing about Sarah is her partner's parents live here in Des Moines. And so it's easy for her to get her from Chicago. So she'd be another one that would be really fun for the retreat.
Okay, well let's talk about that. That I think, and who knew? I'm I got to talk to you guys more often. This is just fascinating. All right, Susan Beckman, you're next. Here she is. We have people from all over the state, by the way.
Several places to unmute, and I couldn't pick the right one first. So
Nope. Here you are.
Anyway, well, part of my question was answered because I was curious as to, similar to with songwriting, sometimes you have the composer of the music and sometimes the writer of the lyrics, and sometimes it's the same person, and sometimes they're long partnerships, and other times someone hands off lyrics to someone. And so I was curious about that, how that worked in this with the artistry and the story, because you might have a story to tell and not have the artistic skills. So I was curious about that. And then, like, if a young person, just among grandchildren, nieces, and nephews, I know so many who are like working with anime and things like that. And so if someone had the artistic side of it, what are the ways they would find to partner with someone who needed a graphic artist for their
I think it is about well, first of all, like I think comics really lend themselves to community really well. Like if you're going to a local con, if you're going to a zine fest, like meeting other people who are doing what you're doing and kind of forming those partnerships is a lot of how I've seen people meet their partners. But then when you get to a different level, like if your kids end up going to school for art or comics or illustration and you become somebody with a portfolio, a publisher will keep those portfolios on file to partner with somebody who wants to write but can't draw, right? Like, and that often happens more when it's like maybe a famous writer or a famous person or figure who wants to do a graphic novel. Then you will be like solicited, like, do you want to partner? And like, we'll do some drawing tests. And do you want to be the artist for this book? So there's lots of different ways it can happen. I feel like, depending on what people want to do, it's more fun to have like a partnership, like that book I mentioned, Big Jim and the White Boy. Like that's a writer artist duo that work together on many projects. They come up with them together, they have the vision, and they pitch the book together as a team. But you can also just be an artist who's doing it for pay to be associated with the project. But I would say if you have grandkids or kids who are really into comics, definitely going to local conventions and like festivals is a really, really great way to meet other people who are doing what you're doing and to figure out kind of what kind of comics do you want to make.
And so then my other question, it's probably obvious to some people, but is that considered the graphic novel? Is that
totally? I mean, I think there's different.
What's the difference? I guess maybe I don't know.
The styles are it gets really inside baseball, right? Like we could talk about this like forever and ever, and there's lots of papers written about it, but essentially like manga and anime are Japanese style, and that's just like a different style. And so if you want to get into that, that's totally great. And I think that those art skills will lend themselves to making whatever you want. You don't just have to make manga and anime, but I think that you're right that a lot of young people right now, because they consume so much of that, are their art looks in that style. Because it's so popular, now a lot of American originated and published books have an anime looking style, just because that's what young people who like art are doing. So it's all kind of blending together. I've talked to a lot of art and comics professors, and I think the older generation can be a little bit snobby about drawing in anime style, but I'm sure that's going to kind of phase out just because it's so infiltrated. And I think that there's a lot of ways to make that style original. I think the one thing about it is like it is a little bit more regimented, like how you can draw, right? Like to be a mangaka and to be an anime artist, there are certain styles, whereas American art and American graphic novels, it's much more like do what you want to do. And different, and you can just see if you go to like the graphic novel section, it's really different. So it depends. I think no matter what, anime's here forever. So
So it's in some ways similar to music in that they're not really country, they're pop. It's
yeah.
that blend or that morphing together of common things that are in common, but that still have a distinct flavor to them.
Yeah, and there can be a lot of snobbery about the genres mixing, but I kind of think it's all whatever.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. Great question. Okay, Sarah, you are up next. You'll need to turn your mic on. Your mic's off. Yeah, I know.
Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Sarah Hayden Paris. I'm the president of Annie's Foundation. And so one of the things that we do to raise awareness about book bans in Iowa, because it's particularly bad here, is we give away banned books. And part of the reason we do that is so that like people can read the books for themselves and see that they're not scary and be like, why? But also because we want to buy the books to support authors who are getting banned. And I was wondering what other things people can do to support authors who are being targeted by the book banners.
Great question. You'll remind, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Sarah, honestly, you probably know more than I do. I feel like publishers, I mean, Random House in particular, which is 10 Speed as part of Random House, has a lot of organizations, or we have a lot of actions that we do to protect authors that are banned. And I definitely think that the publishers always come behind the authors and support them. But obviously, the best thing you can do, right, is talk about the book, buy the book. I think you would know a lot more about organizing on like a municipal level to get these things turned over. On a federal level, it's like we actually have lawyers at Random House who are involved in these things and are always working to try to make sure book bans are overturned. And I think you were probably talking about this before I came, or it sounded like you were, but for me, the reality is that the people who are really pushing for these bans, even on a national level, it's like a very small group of people who are really loud and they're just super organized. And the majority of people in this country are not that interested in book banning. So I feel like the more that we speak out against them, the easier it is to tell that like there are just some people who are way, way, way too active in the book banning community. But you probably know more about that, right?
Yeah, maybe just a little, but yeah, we've handed out over 20,000 banned and challenge books. So hoping to get to 30,000 by the end of the year. So I think we can hit that.
That's incredible.
How are you funded, Sarah? That's a lot of books.
Well, we have a couple of small grants, but mostly it's just small donations. Like somehow it just always works out. And we do buy our books. We're very price conscious, so a lot of what we give away is driven by what we can get. But we try to keep them under $5 a book because we really want to get as many books in hands as possible. So,
sure. Jan, you're up.
Well, I'd just like to recognize Penguin Random House. They sent their banned books bandwagon to Des Moines a couple of years ago, and they are very active in promoting banned books. We were just thrilled to be part of that. And then also, last year we banded together, pun intended, with Drake and Plymouth Church and Des Moines Pride Center and the Des Moines Public Library. And we had like a whole week during Banned Books Week in September, or it was actually October this year, where we just celebrated the authors and talked about the issues. So Des Moines has a real active community that is supporting the people that are out there talking about banning books. I mean, they're supporting the people that are against banning books.
Okay.
Yeah, we have helped Penguin with the lawsuit, providing them with documents that we've submitted or gotten via FOIA requests and things like that. So we try.
Okay, great. Maya, I have a couple more questions, and then I'm going to suggest that when Jarrett is ready, we'll just do a private Zoom, and I'll tag it on, include it in the podcast that we're having here, and we'll just do
That
that
would be amazing.
that
He would
way.
be very happy to do that. I feel so bad he is not here.
It happens. It happens. In terms of the business of publishing, is it more lucrative to go the graphic novel route from a publisher's standpoint? I mean, if you were to, well, let me rephrase
I'm going
this.
to answer that no.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it depends, right? Like if you guys all, a lot of you, I'm sure, have kids in your life who read like Dog Man, Raina Telgemeier. Like those books are very, very, very Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Like that's like comics technically. That is very, very, very lucrative. I think kids world comics, it's a different thing. And I actually mostly work on adult comics. Like Wake Now in the Fire is YA, but has a big adult crossover, is why I'm handling this title and I'm passionate about the topic, so I wanted to work on it. But in my experience, like what I said, like the time it takes to make a graphic novel, if you want to make a lot of money, you should write a romantasy novel and you should make it as freaky as possible, and that will make you a lot of money. But that's not like what a lot of people want to do, right? You want to make something that you're very passionate about. I think that Jarrett did not go into this book, I am assuming, because for money, but for advocacy and for a passion for the project and for, you know, getting the word out about book banning. I think that some graphic novels are very, very, very successful, but just like any genre, not always, right? Like a lot of graphic novels, I would say, don't reach as many people because not everybody reads comics. So,
Hey, Jan, do we have any romantasy authors in Iowa that should come to the retreat?
Oh my gosh, do we?
Seriously?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll give you a whole list.
Okay. Okay. Why not? Well, you know, some people need to make a living.
Yeah, well, and they do. And I will tell you that when we get a panel of romance writers together, it is nonstop laughs. And yeah, it gets a little spicy, let's say.
Well,
that's the language they use, spice level. I mean,
That's
and
right,
I think
spice level.
we're in a beautiful romance novel renaissance, right? Like we're in it.
Okay. All right. I love it. So, do you know about the title, Maya? How the title came to be, which is
This is so embarrassing because you know what? I couldn't tell you actually.
okay.
I mean, I know, like, I want Jarrett to answer that question in your conversation with him, and I should have that, but I don't know exactly why he chose this title, and I don't even know there are multiple titles because by the time this book got to me, it was like almost completely finished. But I know that he was working on it for years and years and years. Like this is like a labor of love that took a very long time. If anyone's seen the book in person yet, which I guess you wouldn't have because it goes on sale tomorrow, it's big and it was edited down from being even bigger. And it's actually kind of rare, I would say, for a young adult graphic novel. They're not usually this large, and I feel like that is something that was a risk that we took, but there's just so much important information in there. We weren't gonna dumb it down.
Okay, so we're going to wrap this up now, and I really appreciate all of you for. There's a fascinating conversation. I always say these potlucks are like coming into my home for a meal that you bring yourself to, and your dish. So that's what we did today. Thank you all for participating, Abana, Jan, Sarah, Maya. Really, really appreciate and your questions, Susan, everybody who participated. Thank you, and hopefully we'll have Jarrett on at 2 o'clock. If you're around, feel free to join me up, but otherwise I'll just do a 10-minute interview with him and we'll tag it onto this podcast. I really congratulate you on the book. It sounds like from your publicist. Oh, we have somebody else joining the call. It sounds like from your publicist that this has been a long process for you to get this book researched and out, and I'm eager to talk to you. I have so many questions, so glad to see we have another guest, and surprise, I'm glad to have you, but we're doing things a little bit differently here in that the bulk of the audience participation part was recorded at noon as we usually do with these potluck calls. But now we get to talk to the author himself, so it works out just fine. Jarrett, tell me, Well, give us synopsis of why you tackled this book. What was going on? What's your personal relationship with the origin of the story?
So I'm a librarian and I have been working in libraries since 2009. I've been mostly, I mean, for the majority of the time I've been working in libraries, I've worked with teenagers. And so from 2009 to 2014, I was in a library, went to grad school. Then I was at another Chicago area library exclusively working with teens. And then now I work at a library called Niles Main District Library, just west of my previous library. And I'm working with kids and teens, primarily kids right now. I'm a school outreach librarian. But prior to my work in libraries, I worked for the ACLU of Illinois, and I worked in particular on the reproductive rights, women, racial justice, and First Amendment rights projects as a legal assistant. And so my professional life really has been devoted to, and I've always been, even in that job, first and foremost, most passionate about defending the rights of students, especially teenagers, in their right to read, their right to express themselves creatively as well as through protest, and other issues like when their student newspaper gets censored by their superintendent, so on and so forth. And so when I was working at Evanston Public Library, which is in my hometown, I was tracking the censorship of Persepolis as it was happening through my Twitter account. And so one night I was working there and I was on the desk and I noticed in my Twitter that Persepolis kept popping up. And this was the night that a lot of the news exploded thanks to the teens promoting the protest. And so this was about 2 days before the protest. Excuse me. And um, I took my first action was to go grab all our copies of Persepolis from the shelves and put up a display front and center when people came in. And I was happy to see 2 days later that they were all gone. They'd all been taken and checked out, presumably by teens. I know by teens because that's who visited our space. Um, but I also cared because it is a book that I care deeply about, that I've always loved. I was as outraged as anybody and baffled by the order to get the books out of the schools, and also as inspired and enthused about the action the teens took to defend it. And they really did. They not only defended it, they beat back the censorship order really well with the help of, I think, the embarrassment that media coverage caused the administration at Chicago Public Schools, and the fact that the Department of Libraries and Chicago Public Schools already had policies and procedures in place to protect all library copies of Persepolis and any other book in their system when it's a library copy. So there were a couple of very important fronts that really intersected my passions and interests, from the work of the librarians who had already done the work to protect books in advance, and the teens who rose up so swiftly. It was incredible. I mean, they had that protest planned within 4 days, and it was on the corner of a very visible corner near Wrigleyville in Chicago, and got a lot of media coverage. And so it was a very effective action, even if it wasn't completely successful. Um, and then a year later, I was in grad school and I was taking a class called Literacy, Reading, and Readers at University of Illinois. And I teach that class now. And it was one of my favorite classes. And so we still talk about it when I teach it. It was one of my favorite classes because I have a passion for reading and readers and, of course, literacy. But I never felt satisfied by the answers that the Chicago Public Schools gave as to why this ban happened, why this book, who was involved, the whole who, what, where, why, how. And so I decided for my thesis for that class, I would investigate what was the entire timeline of how this all went down and then answer those questions. But I specifically wanted to focus on how did the banning of Persepolis affect teen readers within the Chicago public school system. So I emphasized interviewing students who remember the event, whether or not it made them read the book. And then I ended up connecting with a bunch of amazing students who had actually organized the protests and Not only that, a teenager who had 2 years prior to this event started at that school a banned books club, which my mind
Ah,
was blown. And they had already read Persepolis before this all went down. So they were very active and involved. He was an incredible person to interview. Um, and then once I turned it in, I had filed a Freedom of Information Act request because back in 2013, the American Library Association had filed a FOIA to CPS, and they said, please give us all documentation, anything concerning this incident. And they got 8 pages of redacted emails, and
no.
that's it. And the FOIA officer and officials there said, that's all we've got. Again, their official line was, we don't know how this happened, and we're not in the business of censoring, and it was probably a result of miscommunication. And that was the CEO, quote unquote, that's what they call him. It's just the superintendent of schools, but they called the CEO of Chicago Public Schools. Her name was Barbara Bird Bennett. She was adamant she wasn't involved, and it was miscommunication, and let's just move on. And thankfully, in those redacted emails, there was one that was not redacted that referred to a meeting they had that week about taking all the books out of the schools, and that these staffers named network chiefs, they were to go to all their schools within their network that they oversee and remove the books uh, post haste. And so I filed a Freedom of Information Act request when I was writing my paper that said, could I get any documentation related to that one meeting on Monday, March 12th, 2013? I'm just curious if there were notes or minutes taken, anything. I didn't expect to get anything. But I received 43 emails from the FOIA officer related to this incident that showed pretty much who was involved, why the decision was made, how it happened, so on and so forth. They were all redacted when I got them. But they did it incorrectly. They highlighted the things they wanted to redact with black highlighter on the computer. And if you do it that way, you can open it and remove those. So I removed everything. And it showed a couple things. CPS lied through their teeth. Barbara Bird Bennett was involved, made the decision herself.
Wow.
Um, there was no curiosity whatsoever about what Persepolis is, why it should be in a classroom. Turns out it had been an officially chosen text for Chicago Public Schools for their literacy curriculum, so it was a recommended text. Um, there were all sorts of reasons it should have been in there, and nobody asked. Nobody in this long line of emails. And about 6 months later, after all that went down, I'd given all the information to a journalist at the Chicago Reader. The folks at the American Library Association were very thankful to get the real information. And yeah, I just started, I was reading a lot of comics for a graphic novels and comics readers advisory class. And then I just hit on the idea, what if I wrote a graphic novel about the banning of a graphic novel? And I thought the format was perfect because um, to this day, unbelievably, graphic novels are still considered a controversial form of reading. And Persepolis itself was controversial thanks to this. And there were just too many teen voices I couldn't just let sit in an academic paper I turned in for one class. So I decided to start working on it.
Cool. Really, really, really.
That was a long way to answer your
No,
question.
no, but it's fascinating. I want to go back to the book and continue from there. But first, tell me about you. Are you from the Chicagoland area originally? Where are you from?
I live in Evanston, and I was born at the hospital I can see from my backyard.
Ah,
So I was born there. I grew up on the in the North Shore of Chicago, and then went to University of Illinois for creative writing, and I did a lot of theater there at an independent theater in town there. That was very important to my upbringing, and but when I was at school, it was creative writing and history that I was studying. Yeah, grew up around here. I'm a musician. I play drums. I've been in a number of bands, and I love to read.
There you go. There you go. Um, I'm going to follow up on that when we end the interview part, but let's go back to the book. I want to know what what the advantage is of going with a graphic novel as opposed to traditional print text.
Yeah, so especially in writing for teens, number one, the medium itself is enormously popular. Has been for a long time. I was very proud when I worked at Evanston Library. We had an enormous graphic novel and manga section, bigger than most libraries at that time. And we even made a sort of lounge in our space where teens would come in, grab 3 books, and spend 6 hours just sitting on a couch reading. And we just noticed the more they were out, the more they were facing the teens that came in, the more they picked them up and read them. And so it almost goes without saying now that it's an enormously popular format in both children's lit and teen lit, and for adults too. It's weird because it's been normalized in a lot of ways for adults. There are tons of adult readers and tons of people who are not ashamed to be reading it, and yet nearly every week, if not more than once a week, we hear from parents telling us, why do you have all this graphic novel stuff? It's not reading. I don't want my kid grabbing these things. Can you find her something more challenging or more like a real book? And so I guess the rebel in my heart also wanted to contribute to the literature. I mean, there's a ton of amazing work out there. It's as rich as any other genre or format within literature. But for me, I thought if I'm going to write for teens, there's just too many visuals that came to my mind while I was working on these things, and I found visuals from newspaper reporting of the original protests. Persepolis itself originally is a graphic novel, and so uh, I thought teens would like it, should it ever get published. I love writing dialogue. I love solving the problems of how information is conveyed through mostly dialogue and a little bit of narration. And I have 3 picture books that I've written, and I love partnering with an illustrator, or if not so much partnering, seeing how my words are interpreted by an artist and turned into a visual storybook. So all of those sort of came together. And again, I liked the idea of a graphic novel about censoring a graphic novel.
Yeah, I love it. So you weave some personal dynamics, difficult childhood issues that take place within the story. Were they fictionalized or were they an amalgam of kids' stories that you knew about, or what caused you to bring that element into the story?
I'm so glad you asked that. So they're all fictional. All the personal stories are fictional. I like to say that every character's story is fictional, but the mechanics of how the book in the story is banned and how the students and some of the teachers and librarians fought back is exactly how it went down in almost the same timeline. So that's why it's, a fictionalized account or based on a true story. Um, yeah, all of the personal stories of the teens are fictionalized, and one exception is there's this character of Aditi. Aditi is an immigrant she grew up in Mumbai until her family was about 8 or 9. That is based on a student that I interviewed who became vice president of the Banned Books Club.
Mm.
She was not involved before the Persepolis protest in 2013, but she wanted to get involved again. And she told me a story about growing up, being young in Mumbai, loving to read, but local library would not allow her to check out more than one book per day. And she wanted to read 2 books per day. So she would go to the library and I guess she would check out a book in the morning and then run home, read it as fast as she could. And she knew there was a desk shift change at noon. And so she would go back to the library, pretend she was visiting the library for the first time that day, and checked out another book. And she would usually check out, she said, a longer one so that she could read it overnight and return it the next day. And that just touched my heart, this image of this sort of uh, book reading little radical reader, gaming the system so she could get more literature. Um, and I loved that story so much, I asked her, could I give that story verbatim to Aditi in the book? And she agreed, and she's always been a big supporter of this project. And so I'm very, very happy that the one just absolutely true story that I was told made it into the book as a backstory for one of the main characters. Um, but to answer your other question, it's important, it's very important to me to depict and tell the story of the personal struggles of teenagers who are also doing the amazing work of protesting and making their school communities and their neighborhoods better. Because that's true about anybody you look at in a protest. If you look at the protests going on in every city now, everybody who's working so hard to raise their voices are also dealing with it's tough to live,
Yeah.
you know? It's tough to live everywhere. And so I wanted to give backstories that brought alive the characters as humans, the crushes they have, the struggles with romance, but also family struggles and personal mental health struggles, because those have all touched my life in big ways, as well as family members' lives and friends and personal, like growing up as well, same thing. So it was also a way for me to write fiction that touched on all the things I always wanted to write about when it came to young adult literature.
Well done, well done.
Thank you.
Going through the book today, I don't know if this is wishful thinking, but I came away wondering if books are going to be more important to young people today, and maybe as an escape or as something to throw yourself into instead of all the noise and all the social media stuff. Is that wishful thinking or is that really happening?
I so I don't know if it's happening, and I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying I truly don't know. But what I will say is I think that's a brilliant point because I do think the more we speak up about information literacy, visual literacy, and that's another thing about graphic novels, is they're an amazingly democratic medium in that they teach visual literacy. They teach you how to analyze a picture and understand what's going on, and then pair it with words, and then try to think critically. I do think it's an amazing tool for that, and I think a lot of parents, and I tell them this, I think they're missing a big opportunity. If their kid loves to read, and the only thing they want to read right now is graphic novels, um, what's the alternative? They don't read. Would you prefer that? Maybe trust the people who are experts, like the library professionals who are saying it's reading. Desmond Tutu only read comic books growing up. John Updike only read comic books. So I always bring out these examples to say like they turned out pretty well as thinkers and literary figures and leaders. But to your point, I think so many people helped make this book happen. It was a true collaboration of, I mean, if you looked at my afterword, I don't know if you, or my acknowledgments, I was a little embarrassed by how long it is. Because I was like, who am I to, I'm not winning an Oscar here, but like, I had to because it's, there were so many people who helped me with my research. There were so many people who listened to me tell the story over and over for me to understand it better. And then when we got in the editorial process, once the art came in, we started actually designing this book and cutting it, and editing it for publication. The team is huge at both Chronicle and then even bigger at 10 Speed Graphic when it was originally published or purchased by Chronicle, but then bought by 10 Speed Graphic. The team is huge. Everything from my amazing editor Jeannie Seo to the art director, there was another graphic novelist who worked on it named GB Tron. He was one of the graphic designers on it. It was kind of amazing, and it was a bit of a dream because I'm a fan of his graphic novel Viet in America, which is a memoir about his family coming from Vietnam to America. And so I say all this in answer to your question. because when so many people look at a thing, when so many people are trying to apply ethical editorial decisions to a thing, to a piece of writing, it becomes that much more trustworthy,
Mhm.
um, and it becomes that much more, for lack of a better word, authoritative. And when you look at social media and everything, I do wonder, and also now the onslaught of AI, which is, in my opinion, a tool of fascism because it's effectively teaching us never to believe our eyes because anything can be AI. And so even the undeniable fact of videos can now have an air of deniability to them. And it's very dangerous. But I think people are realizing now, like, hey, some one person with a camera or one person making a video or a post, they can say anything. And so that whole question of how do I believe this may lie and does lie, I think, in most books and most items that a library collects. So not only I think books and reading are essential, but also libraries because they collect it all with standards and professional, decision making that um, you don't get otherwise.
Tell me about the title, and then since I'm enveloping this in a broader reader related podcast about book banning in Iowa and that sort of thing, we can end pretty soon. But tell me about the title, and then I'm gonna ask you some more questions offline.
Okay. So yeah, the title is it comes from our desire or my desire to there are a lot of there's a lot of burning imagery in books about censorship because of Fahrenheit 451.
Ah,
But I didn't want to reject that because we've seen it a lot of times because there's a book club in the book called 451 Banned Books Club, which was the book club at Lane Tech High School. So I wanted the allusion to 451, but I also wanted something that was galvanizing, felt galvanizing, and felt like had some urgency to it. And so I'm a big, lifelong fan of Rage Against the Machine. And actually, during the pandemic, I was sitting with my son, who I was homeschooling during it, and he and I fell really hard back into listening to Rage Against the Machine, and he was about fifth grade at this point, and he really liked it too. So we were listening to it all the time, and we were listening to a song of theirs called "Sleep Now in the Fire," and that is a song that is told from the point of view of greed itself. It's like an embodiment of greed singing to you.
mm,
And what Zach De La Rocha, who is also one of my favorite writers in terms of lyrics and poetry, what he's saying in it is that greed surrounds us. Greed is forever whispering in our ears, just go to sleep. Be numb and go to sleep while we take over and destroy the world, or while the greed, doing that. And so one day I was sitting with my son and I said, "Wake now in the fire," because we were in the midst of what is just the was just the start, unfortunately, of an explosion, an inferno of book bannings that have taken hold in states across the country. And so I really wanted something that, so that's a fire. If the fire is the books burning, we need to wake now in the fire.
wow, that's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. Um, well, I'm going to ask you one more question, and that is, tell me what it's like to be a kid today. What now? I mean, you've seen children evolve and into young adulthood, and I cannot imagine what it would like to be a child today or raise one today.
Yeah.
So, what's happening with these young people? There's so much going on.
I can tell you what it's like to raise two of them. I have two teenagers. And it's interesting, even being 4.5 years apart, they have different experiences of the world through technology because one of them, born in 2006, had about 7+ years of not having smartphone, not 7+ years, sorry. She was born in 2006, but it wasn't until 8th grade, 9th grade that she finally, had a smartphone, but even that one was kind of locked down. It was kind of a dumb smartphone. And our son right now, though, he was born 4.5 years later, and so exposure to things like iPad and YouTube and the inundation of imagery that's hard to explain or understand. I feel really strongly for kids today because not only are they inundated with tech pressures, so there's tech social pressures. As much as parents don't want to give their kids phones until they're 14, everyone has one in middle school, and so you are made fun of. You're the odd one out if you don't have it. Your friends are making plans through different social media sites like Snapchat and group chats, and then add on top of that social media videos. You're not in the know of what, kids are seeing at school. And so, but then when you do get these things, you're subjected to online bullying. If you're a young woman or a young girl, you are subjected to horrible things that might be thrown at you if you don't have the right privacy settings. And so I think childhood and teen years are both, there's empowerment in having the tech and being connected. There's also a lot of exposure to things that I think have truly thrown a lot of people's mental health, because these are precious years. The precious years for developing your own point of view, your own artistic outlook, and also looking at the world through the beautiful perspective of a child. And when you're getting images of hell, people being executed by ICE, and also school shootings, just the news is so severe and it's so terrifying that I think there's a level of anxiety that I don't know has ever been seen before in this way, because it's also, you never have an escape from it. When I came home after getting bullied in middle school, I was home. Unless I got prank called, which occasionally happened, then you just take it off the hook. I was home. I was safe. I turned on MTV and I could have relief. But now, the computer is in your pocket and it follows you everywhere. And when you block one person, they find another way around it. I mean, it's ceaseless, and I think it's really, really destructive. So I feel a lot for kids, but at the same time, they don't know anything else. And so it's hard to convey. I don't want to convey that to them. Like, I feel bad for you.
Yeah.
I just work really hard to try and present alternatives. And I do that through my library work and writing books like these.
If you could wave a magic wand, what's the future of Wake Now in the Fire?
I hope the future is conversations like this and lots of people reading it. I really hope it gets read widely. I would love for it to be read in high schools, in English classes, or banned book clubs. Yeah, definitely sold widely and read widely, opening up opportunities for me to talk with people like you.
Great.
For sure.
That's
Yeah.
been a lot of fun. Hold on just a second. Thank you so much for being with us here. Let's see. I'm going to stop the recording.